not really a data slate now. My ship is still too close to this plague star. Fine, I can do this. It's only been a little over a month since the Q2 2023 data slate, but the dire threat of the Chaos Cult Horde and the extreme anti-elite function of the Inquisition required immediate attention. There were also some clarifications needed, some of which didn't help with my understanding of the changes, and the Pathfinders got another look. I always assumed their souls were too small for Games Workshop to notice. Maybe that newfound god of theirs has something to do with this. Real quick, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy tabletop strategy games and would like to keep up with all the content we release over here at the Chimerix Project, maybe press that subscribe button. The like may also be useful for something. I'll also have a community Discord linked in the description below where we chat about rules, show off our projects, and regale each other with stories of our battles. Join up if that sounds potentially interesting. Now, before the Rotfather takes me, let's see what Games Workshop feels is important enough to release a quarterly adjustment in less than 2 months from the last one. Core rules and overarching elements in the game have not shifted. No mass overhaul of the central systems in Kill Team this quarter as we wait for the announcement of the first drop of next season. Season 1 teams saw a couple adjustments among the Pathfinders, the Warpcoven, the Gellerpox, and the Elucidian. First up, the Pathfinders. Interesting and enjoyable buffs here for those that follow the greater good. The, I guess, Kayun Art of War ability gained an addition to its already existing 2 retainable cover saves. A unit under the effect can also enjoy performing either a mission or pickup action for 1 point less in cost, down to 0. Functions like this serve 2 APL teams well, as it gives them a taste of the 3 APL elite life, but with more focus on specific actions. This also gives both Art of Wars a function that helps achieve this pseudo 3 APL system. Even more interestingly, the Pathfinders have gained a sort of unique faction ability. In the instance of close quarters matches, they are allowed to use guard while in conceal. Mildly uncommon, this can only result in the application of a marker light action, however. Marker lights, of course, are key to the damage output potential of this team, and close quarters limits the application of these based on how well an opponent controls the flow of unit activation. This should bring some power back to the ranged-focused team in the darkened halls of close quarters. The Warpcoven. Recently, they saw a brilliant update, reigniting my interest in playing them again. I guess the wording felt too odd. The changes here, as far as I can tell, just move the already existing -1 APL when activated outside of range of a sorcerer from the sorcerer to the marine. It then adjusts the wording of the battle honor accordingly. As a sort of buff, the Warpcoven also received a full unlock of their TAC-op archetypes. Originally, you had to take more Zangors than Astartes to see the recon pool of options. Now you just have access to it, regardless of list. When you think of recon, you think of speed and agility, teams that can outmaneuver anyone. The Warpcoven might not come to mind, but with the sorcerer abilities to teleport units, gain movement speed, fly, even slow down enemies, they can be surprisingly fast for a team that on paper seems so slow. The expanded mission options should hopefully provoke fun alternatives to the more cut and dry security TAC-ops. The Gellerpox. They were left alone in the Q2 data slate. We thought the nerfs were all done, but oh no, there is more to be had. Rust Emanations as a strategic ploy is now limited to only the Nightmare Hulks. This further reduces the potential durability that the mutants and glitchlings had access to by forcing units in their engagement range to be considered super injured. Now, not only do they have the worst feel no pain option, but they no longer reduce the enemy potential to hit them in melee. The Gellerpox bag of tricks is now massively reduced. Have we finally seen the end to Games Workshop's campaign against these twisted abominations? The Elucidian Starstriders had a change from the last data slate that I had claimed seemed a little hard to understand, so they gave it a second attempt at being clear. The Undaunted Explorers ploy saw a change that people weren't sure about. Some thought the info was woven into the original concept. I thought it might fully replace the whole strategic ploy info. I don't know if this fully pushes me one way or the other. It's almost exactly what it said before, just in bullet points. I'm guessing the limit to the ploy of needing units to be within certain ranges of things might still be in place. They just want to clarify that it only works for each unit the first time they are attacked, and that the single instance of damage dealt from one of the dice can be halved to a minimum of 2, rounding up. I still wish they would just have given us the full rewording of the ploy to clarify everything. For a casual passive reading, this adjustment feels like the whole ploy is replaced by just these bullet points, meaning the unit halves all damage done the first time they get attacked, regardless of location on the field. Moving on to Season 2. Most of the big changes from the early teams remain intact. The Exaction Squad, after their recent buff, is getting a tiny nerf of sorts. In the last Dataslate, Ruthless Efficiency gained a P1 benefit when 2 inches from an enemy. This is now limited to things that don't have blast or the word grenade in its name. That feels like it should have been there in the last update, but the way it was worded allowed frag grenades, when thrown from 2 inches, to have the P1 rule. The attacker would hit themselves, but for the P1 potential, I'm sure they would be screaming for the Emperor as they did it. The Hearthkyn have now received a sizable buff for this diminutive team. With +1 wound, they are now as tough as the Exaction and Kasserkin, as well as most Eldar units. The Field Medic's melee now has lethal 5. 4 attacks with a 3-5 damage line hitting on 4s, the lethal 5 is definitely welcome, and should make this unit a little more dangerous to melee. The Plasma Knife equipment option for the rest of the units are all brought up to par with this Medic's Knife, gaining 1 attack and the lethal 5 rule. The biggest change, in my opinion, is for the leader. Originally, when activated, the leader would pick a target it could see and place a grudge token on it. Grudge tokens being key to the core of the Hearthkyn's team ability, allowing units to convert normal hits to crits. Now this ability is a bit more terrifying. The action is used in the strategy phase as a sort of free non-ploy strategy. A token can be placed on any enemy, regardless of the leader's vision. If 3 or more friendly salvagers are down and out, you can place 2 tokens instead. A survival buff and a damage buff. Not bad for these angry space dwarves. The Felgor Ravagers got a slight nerf. A Ravager under the influence of a Frenzy token can now be downed by a ranged crit. The Ravager can still try and save against this attack, and shooting doesn't get the benefit of needing 2 regular hits to do the job like melee does, but this will greatly help teams with high crit chance concepts and not so great melee. The unit also doesn't count its APL anymore for the purpose of controlling objectives. Even though they can still be a threat in combat, they are now near worthless for gaining victory points from key objectives. And now, we finally get a glimpse at the changes to the teams that prompted such a rapid response with this data slate: the Chaos Cults and the Inquisitorial Agents. The cults got to see the peak of the iceberg in the Quarter 2 data slate with the Iconarch damage reduction nerf. But with this update, the Iconarch no longer has his powerful always-on combat auras. Each aura comes with a 1 action point cost, meaning he will have to activate early to see benefit from them. Since the Iconarch is 2 APL, however, this will force him to choose whether to use his auras or to use the powerful flamer he is equipped with. This nerf hamstrings the Iconarch in big ways. The wombo combo of moving the Iconarch within 4 inches of several enemies and mowing them down with a flamer, hitting for effectively 3-4 damage, is no longer an easy option. Activating the unit late and letting the auras do their work beforehand is out of the window as well. I've never enjoyed using icon bearers that need to activate to use their abilities. Giving your opponent a sort of free activation from this 2-step process is a great way to lose momentum and miss out on needed actions. I'll miss you, Iconarch. As well, what my group has been expecting has come to pass. The 5-up Feel No Pain is now a 6. Still a mitigation, but one that doesn't have nearly as much impact. The longevity of the team will now be solely focused on the mutation ability and how that keeps people going. The The sickening aura ploy is now limited to mutants and torments only. It is out of the hands of the Dark Commune. Sorry, Blessed Blades. Lastly, the mutant melee option is no longer relentless. It is now ceaseless. This is understandable. Ceaseless and rending together is still a scary prospect, and the torments got to keep relentless for now. Everything done definitely reduces the team's overall damage and damage reduction. A truly brutal outcome, but not an unexpected one. Not to be forgotten in this Dataslate's balance attempt, the Inquisitorial Agents got a little buff and some decent nerfs, reigning in one of their biggest assets. Originally, this team was one of the few who could bring 4 total weapons with AP2 in their stat lines, 2 from the Inquisitors and 2 from some ancillary choices. Now there is a team-wide limit that only allows 2 operatives in total to take the field with an AP2 weapon on hand. No more Pistolier, Gun Servitor, dual ancillary gunner option combos for that mass Plasma Melta gameplay. Their Absolute Authority tactical ploy can now also only be used once per each individual enemy ploy used, and it can't be used on ploys that cost nothing. I'm sure the Hyrotech are pleased with this outcome, as they can now freely use Reanimation Protocol without fear. For their tiny buff, the Tome Skull and the Interrogator gained a GA2 function that works between them. This will reduce the overall activations by 1 for the team, and allow the powerful buffs these two have to move around the field simultaneously when needed. And with that, the Q3 Dataslate ends. A wild ride, a random look at bettering the Pathfinders, a team I haven't heard much about as of late. Another smack on the plagued nose of the Gellerpox, some text-based clarifications and fixes here and there, nerfs for the tanky melee teams, buffs for the Hearthkyn that will hopefully make them far more fun for their players. The nerfs for the cultists seem very needed, though I am truly saddened by the destruction of the Iconarch. I'm just glad the Mind Witch is still doing the Dark Lord's work, however. And the Inquisitors have lost their biggest advantage over every team, the ability to massively melt targets down with extreme ranged weaponry. Certainly not the last of the adjustments for the cults and Inquisitors, I think, but what about you? How do you feel about this shift? Hopefully the last before we see the dawn of the next season. Do you think this is the end of the grinding down of the Gellerpox? Will the Hand of the Archon be the only team from Season 2 that Games Workshop doesn't touch? Yeah, I know. You forgot they were a thing too. I do feel like they are a good team. Just odd that they aren't seeing even a slight change. And with Season 3 in mind, get your predictions in now. I believe the rumor mill is Eldar versus Space Marine Scouts. Are you on board with that? Or are you hoping for something possibly more fun? Nids versus Striking Scorpions or something like that? Let us know in the comments below. And again, don't forget that there is a link to our community Discord in the description. We'd love to have you. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.